in a league where winning one-on-one against man coverage is hard, and there aren't a lot of guys that can do it, why not just bring back the guy who most reliably did that for you last year? The Zach Ertz question is a really fascinating question when you talk about the Commanders and how Adam Peters builds this roster in 2025. Zach was their second best pass catcher in 2024. Terry was incredible, career season, 1,300 yards or whatever it was, or 13 touchdowns, I should say, sets the franchise record. He was way up there in yardage as well. He's just awesome. And in super clutch key situations, red zone, obviously he was fantastic, but I think about how many big third down catches he had. But there was no one who was probably more clutch in terms of their season than Zach Ertz. Led the NFL in fourth down catches, certainly for a tight end. I think he led the NFL in fourth down catches overall. He was their go-to guy in man-to-man situations and helps create matchups for this offense when they don't really have anyone else outside of Terry to create them. And that's a tough ask for any number one receiver. Even like when the Bengals played the Broncos, like they were able to do what they did against that really good Broncos defense because T. Higgins as a number 2 was able to create matchups against Riley Moss, the Broncos number 2, as opposed to Jamar Chase, who's a matchup nightmare for almost everyone else. He and Surtain, Chase got some, but it wasn't like he got his at the level that Jamar Chase is accustomed to getting because Surtain is that good. So if Terry's facing number one corners and you have a true number one corner and a number one receiver, it's much more of a wash. Who's your next guy? And for Washington, that was Zach, who didn't find a linebacker safety that he couldn't abuse all year when he absolutely had to have it. And that creates, to me, quite the conundrum for Adam Peters if he is looking to get more explosive offensively. I shouldn't say a conundrum. It just presents an interesting array of options because I do think that in a tight end class in the draft that's pretty loaded up, there are really good pass-catching options that are going to be available to Washington, certainly at the end of the first round, if not at the end of the second round. And that's typically where a lot of these really good tight ends have gone. And you also have an early-ish third-round pick because, although I guess it's more middle because Miami was good later in the year, but you have Miami's third-rounder, not your own, because you traded your own away in the Lattimore trade, and you got Miami's third from Philly in the Jahan Dotson trade. So you have that range where you're going to have 2 picks in about 20 selections to potentially take a tight end, but there's also going to be running backs and a bunch of other positions that are available then. But in a league where finding guys who can win one-on-one is hard, why wouldn't you just bring Zach back? And I think the ultimate answer is they probably will. This is not a guarantee, and it also should not prevent you, even though you used a second round to run Sinnott next year, it should not prevent you from taking one of these higher-end pass-catching tight ends that in the future your offense can hopefully look much more similar to what you hoped it would with San Francisco being the model, where this year you're going to go draft your George Kittle and Ben Sinnott is more your Kyle Juszczyk, who's a little bit more fullbacky. And you can still use him as a tight end, but if he long-term is a really high-end number 2 tight end because you have like a stud in number 1, that's fine. You can play a lot of 12 personnel with Jayden Daniels and know that Sinnott's got the athleticism to split out, and so does this other TBD tight end. And really the question becomes, can Sinnott be good enough as a blocker that you can then also let John Bates walk in free agency because he's a free agent. But to get back to my main point, in a league where winning one-on-one against man coverage is hard, and there aren't a lot of guys that can do it, why not just bring back the guy who most reliably did that for you last year, who's got a great rapport with the quarterback, who's a great leader in your locker room, and then also bring in a more explosive tight end in some form or fashion, or know that Sinnott can develop into that, and then you bring back Bates too, and you just keep your tight end room the same. Colson Yankoff can stay too, the 4th tight end who was a special teamer for a lot of the year. He can, there you go. You're set. That's going to be an interesting thing. They also signed Cole Turner to the futures contract. So there's a lot of I think machinations there. But let's say they roll with that, right? Some combination of bringing guys back, new tight end, whatever. But Zach is a part of the equation. Well, now you're looking at receiver and running back to get more explosive. And that's where I think the fun really begins. I would spend a lot of money on Chris Godwin. I would spend a lot of money on T. Higgins, frankly, but I don't know that the amount of, like, T. Higgins I don't think is going to get a lot of money. I think T. Higgins is going to get more money than any wide receiver in football. I think there are enough teams that are receiver needy that have cap space, including the Patriots, who have literally more than anyone else, that T. Higgins might have the leverage as a true unrestricted free agent to reset the market and somehow earn more than Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Is that how that should go? Based off merit? No. But markets decide value, not merit. That's how the world works. And so if you say he's off the board, can you go aggressively after Godwin, assuming that his medical checks out? I would be super interested there. And then, if not, you know, this isn't the strongest receiver draft, but there are some guys that are interesting. And then, obviously, you need McCaffrey to step up as your third rounder last year, et cetera. And then the other one that's really interesting is what do you do at running back on the offensive side of the ball? And I am down for an upgrade there. Not to say that B-Rob is bad, but he's getting near the end of his rookie deal. I don't think he's a guy that you're looking to pay any kind of significant money. And I think just finding someone who's a bit more explosive can be really valuable for an offense. And there's plenty of examples of specifically rookie running backs coming in and being really effective because when these guys are young and they haven't taken NFL hits yet, there just seems to be a bit more pop in their legs. And that probably doesn't speak great of the long-term repercussions of playing running back in the NFL, that outside of Saquon Barkley, backs' ability to keep their explosiveness over time doesn't seem real great. And then by the time you're 27, the chances of you busting a 60-yarder, if you're not named Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry, doesn't seem to be very good. But, okay, let's take that data for what it is, cold, hard facts, and maybe go get a rookie running back in the Bucky Irving range, who was a third-rounder, and you can have a new 1,100-yard rusher next year or standing next to Jayden Daniels. So I think that's the route I would go, is to say, look, do you want a better, more explosive tight end because of how valuable the tight end position is and the matchups you can create? Absolutely. But I'm not willing to give up on one of my leaders, who is my most reliable man-to-man target when he's still got gas in the tank, if he wants to come back. And I very much got the sense from listening to Zach Ertz that he would like to come back in 2025. Then there's the defensive side, where I think you can just upgrade pretty much everywhere on all three levels. You have, obviously, a similar question about Bobby Wagner that you have about Ertz. You have a guy that was super productive. He was second-team All-Pro. So I don't want to hear, oh, he's slow. Like, yeah, he's slower than he used to be. But, like, he was second-team All-Pro. It's been forever since you had a second-team All-Pro. And then you pair him with Frankie. You have Jordan McGee waiting in the wings, who they like a lot, who kind of gets a do-over on this year because he was so banged up the entire year. So as long as that's not who he is, as long as he's not injury-prone and he just can never kind of get started this year, and then he'll go into the offseason and kind of reset and hopefully be good moving forward, then you could certainly look at upgrading that position, or you could just roll with what you got. And then on the defensive line, I think you need someone who can go get you a bucket, a.k.a. a sack. Because while Frankie as a blitzer was fantastic, the Frankie doing the Micah Parsons edge thing didn't exactly work out. A lot of his pressure production was not when he was lined up as an edge one-on-one with someone, or, frankly, anywhere else, right? Like, he's not going and beating a guard doing the Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons thing where you just put him over your weakest guy and then let him go. I want to go find that guy. And that might be a trade type of thing. It could be some guy. There are a couple guys in free agency. But this is also, I think, a draft class that's heavier on freaky athletes. From my very early understanding of doing a little bit of draft research. And so, can you develop one of those guys into a multi-sack guy? And then, obviously, Lattimore's coming back. People can crow about that till the cows come home. But he's coming back. Hopefully, he'll be better and healthy, and they do a good job on the strength and conditioning side with him this offseason. Mikey kicking him back inside, I think, is ideal. So where do you then find your other corner? There are about 4 or 5 guys in free agency that are intriguing. Free agent corners are always scary, but there's, I think this group knows what they're looking for. They've also had great success with later round picks. Do they go find a guy with some good length and good ball skills who needs some work on his technique, and maybe that's why he wasn't so good in college? He gets with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, who have been developers of great corners for years and years and years, from Trayvon Diggs to Deron Bland to all the other guys that they had in Dallas. Not to mention guys that Dan had, and think about Richard Sherman back in the day, right? Converted wide receiver. They take the guys with the ball skills, they teach them how to play corner, and as long as you are physical and play hard, like Dan can work with that. So I think that you look there, and then the big question at safety is, do you re-sign Jeremy Chin? And I think that answer is yes. And then there's a couple other guys just kind of floating around in the background too that are like, what do you do with Dominique Hampton, who was their 5th-round pick last year that converted from safety to linebacker and now has a redshirt year under his belt? Like, what is he? What options does he give you? Is he like a third safety linebacker hybrid who's going to play a ton in the box? Well, if so, then, and he's still kind of a safety, but they kind of made him a linebacker, what does that mean for Chin? Do you want a guy with a little bit more range back there instead? Like, there's some interesting machinations depending on how some of these draft picks, come up that are going to cause some interesting discussions and meetings out in Ashburn between Dan and Joe and Adam and Lance Newmark and all the staff there. But ultimately, I think the cool thing is we can all say, you guys will probably figure it out. You guys seem to be really smart. You guys seem to be able to have these discussions, get on the same page, and have a plan for guys. And so some of the improvement next year, presuming that it comes, will come from internal improvement. Some will come from draft and guys they bring in. And I do think that there's a chance to fill some needs in free agency as discussed here at all 3 levels of the defense. And depending on kind of the swing piece in Zach Ertz, we'll possibly push what you do on the offensive side of the ball line. That's a non-negotiable. Definitely going to see some upgrades there.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.